So this is my week 6 discussion board. This week we read 3 stories. I wasn't quite sure if Love Song was supposed to be included in the video, so I'm gonna do it just in case. In all 3 of these stories we read this week, the main characters are flawed. Barn burning. The main character Snoops. I'm not really sure. He's an angry tenant farmer who you can tell has a habit of mistreating his son, and he always resorts or reacts with violence when he has a dispute with the white men that he always comes into conflict with. In Snows of Kilimanjaro, the main character Harry, he's facing death, and he's trying to come to grips that he never reached his full potential. He spent his life, living off rich women that he would marry, and he never really became anything himself. Then in Love Song, the speaker is contemplating which direction to go in with his life, and even thinking about death. He's contemplating it and everything. All 3 stories, I feel that the main characters, or the characters, they're in fragile psychological states. They're mentally questioning things, and just seem a little off. People were traumatized. They were traumatized by war, and they came home wondering, what was now the purpose of living, and they couldn't really formulate ways to communicate their emotions to one another. So at the same time that was going on, women's roles were changing because of women's suffrage and modernism. In Barn Burning, the wife and daughters were still expected to obey the male leader of the house. But then you see in Snows of Kilimanjaro, Harry's wife, she had a string of young male suitors and travels with her husband, and she even participated in a shooting expedition without him. So, she was a little more separate from her husband, able to do her own thing, and respected. In Nathan's presentation about Barn Burning, Nathan asked, let me look here. He asked about the social classes of the time period and what Faulkner wants you to take away from this story. So, in 1895, I believe that the former slaves, they were struggling to find work, struggling to find ways to support their families and figure out, where exactly they would fit in the social fabric of this country. They were just coming along trying to figure this stuff out. I think Snopes was angry, and he was acting out and showing his strength by being aggressive with the white men he came into contact with. Because of all of this, he was confused. Sartoris, his son, he knew that the actions of his father were wrong, so he faced a big moral dilemma. Does he lie for his father, or does he take his own route and tell the truth and stand by his moral code? I think Faulkner wanted the reader to realize how difficult life was like for former slaves, how difficult it was for them to find their niche and find their place in society. He also, I believe, wanted the reader to realize that, you can be somebody different than where you come from. Just because Sartoris, his father, was a bad man, a mean man, he didn't have to be like him. He could be his own person. It doesn't really matter where you come from. You're the one that determines where you'll go and how you'll get there. You can choose your own path. And just because his father was acting out and stuff, he wasn't going to follow that path. Sartoris, you could see he wanted a different kind of life. He didn't want to be like his father. And then in Matthew's presentation on Snows of Kilimanjaro, he asked about the symbols of the story and if Harry was satisfied with his life. Personally, I believe Harry was not satisfied with his life. He was unhappy because, like I stated before, he never reached his full potential as a person. He kept marrying rich women. He didn't really do anything himself. So he never reached his full potential. He never saw what he could become. He relates to the flashbacks, and the reader knows that he had some terrifying experiences in the war. He went through some tough times. So you kind of gain an understanding of why he's such an emotional mess. What was the other question? Oh, symbol. My favorite symbol in the story, is the circling hyena. I believe that that's a great symbol in that it represents that death is just hanging around the corner. It's just around outside of the camp, and you don't really know. You don't know when the hyena will attack, just like you don't know when death will take over, when death will take you and choose you, because you don't know your time. I like that the setting was in Africa, in the shadow of Mount Kilimanjaro. It's called the House of God. So, Harry's facing these and contemplating with death and these thoughts, and Mount Kilimanjaro is called the House of God, so it's like heaven, so it's like he died and went to heaven, and all of that stuff. But yeah, that is my weekly review.